I'm Peter White. Welcome to the Inside Network.
Welcome to the Inside Network. I'm Peter White and my guest today is Graham Kelly, CEO of Noxopharm. Noxopharm is listed on the ASX under the ticker NOX. It's a drug development company specialising in cancer treatment and more recently, COVID treatment. Graham, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Good to be here.
Could you maybe start by focusing on your cancer work, even though you've moved into COVID? Can you give us a brief explanation of what you're doing in the area of cancer treatment?
Sure. Well, we're focusing at the moment on a drug called Vyondra that the company has developed, and its major claim to fame, I guess, is that it has the ability to restore immune function to tumours. And now, for the average person, they might think, well, so what? The so what is that the vast majority of human tumours have deliberately removed immune cells from their tumour, which means that they're free to grow without any trouble from, they're not troubled by the body's immune system. So if you can put the immune system back into the tumour, then you go a long way to eradicating the tumour. So we're using our drug not so much on its own, but in combination with other standard forms of treatment, whether it's chemotherapy or radiotherapy or the new whiz-bang immunotherapies. They all will work better if there is an immune function inside a tumour, and that's what our drug does.
Are you working alongside smaller companies like yourself, or with companies with larger brand names?
Well, we're working with one company in particular, a big US company called Bristol-Myers Squibb. So we're about to start a trial using Vyondra in combination with one of their anti-cancer drugs. We've also done some work with a Novartis drug. It really doesn't matter which drug you're talking about and whether you're talking about a big or small company. Pretty much every form of anti-cancer therapy looks like it will work better if you can put immune function back inside the cancers. So we're looking at different uses of our drug across chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and then these immunotherapies.
Well, the fact that you have the support, I presume you have the support of the Novartis and the Bristol-Myers for using their drugs, that would seem to me a positive sign.
Well, indeed. I mean, they're all. There are no therapies really that work in 100% of cancer patients, or are curative in more than a very, very low number of people. So any anti-cancer therapy needs to work better, and is going to benefit from the sort of help we can offer. So yeah, it's not surprising that large companies would be reaching out to us. In the case of Bristol-Myers Squibb and their drug, which is called Opdivo, it had sales last year of $8 billion US, and it accounted for about 30% of their total revenue. So if they can increase the response rate to that drug, then that translates into massive dollars every year.
Well, of course, drug development is all about milestones and phases. Let's focus on, say, prostate cancer, which is one of your main focuses, I know. Where are you in terms of phase 1, phase 2, or whatever, in terms of Vyondra and those trials?
Yeah, well, we're in phase 2, so we're in the midway point. So phase 1 is typically really about establishing safety and finding out, how best to give the drug, and just to make sure that you're doing the right thing by the patient. Phase 2 is where you're looking for proof of concept. Now you want to demonstrate that this drug is going to do something. And then phase 3 is really the final stage where you're comparing yourself against the standard of care to demonstrate that you're beating that standard of care. So we're in the middle. We're at the point of demonstrating that the drug is working and is doing something meaningful to the patient.
And are you at the early stages of phase 2, or are you midway through? I guess, how advanced is your stage 2 process, I guess, at the moment?
Well, depending on the...
We're talking mid-April as the recording date.
Right. So depending on which trial you're talking about, we are either at the start of phase 2 or in the middle of phase 2. And so there's a lot of stages to go through with this, but we've for some applications we've already established proof of concept. We're confident that we've demonstrated that our drug makes other drugs work better. So now we're at the point of just getting the numbers up so that we and the and doctors and other companies can be confident that we are doing something meaningful. And so we're at a point now where the people can assign a value to our technology, and that's an important part that any drug development company needs to reach, where people can see it's working and put a dollar value around the worth of that asset.
Well, of course, in your trials, it's come to pass in recent times that the Vyondra drug could have some very significant effects, positive effects for people with extreme COVID. Can you talk us through that?
Yes, well, this came totally unexpectedly. Vyondra was developed as an anti-cancer drug, although some of the drugs that are being tested at the moment in the pandemic patients are repurposed other drugs, including drugs, anti-cancer drugs, or drugs that are being used to treat inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, for example. So there's nothing unusual about what we're doing. But we didn't expect it. But some Australian scientists looked at our drug and said, look, did you realise that your drug has an anti-inflammatory effect that we believe is potentially able to deal with what is killing a lot of pandemic patients? And that was unexpected. We hadn't sought that out, but it was gifted to us as a piece of news, and so we decided that we would test it and we would run a study, and so we've been testing it in both animals and in humans, and in animals we're seeing clear evidence that it could be useful.
Well, I think a lot of people have heard of cytokine storm. Just can you talk us through the continuum of inflammation, cytokine storm, and septic shock?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, when anybody gets a virus or even a bacteria that sets up, particularly in the lung, so it could be influenza virus or it could be this pandemic virus. It sets up an infection in the lung, and that infection leads to some damage in the lung, and the body needs to repair that damage. So the repair process is driven by chemicals that the body makes, and these are called cytokines. They're little chemicals, little proteins, and there's dozens of them, and the body pumps them out into the blood, and their job is to repair the damage. And that repair process might take a week or so, and once the repair is completed and the virus has been eradicated, then the level of those cytokines drops and everything goes back to normal. Now, in about 96-97% of people who get COVID-19 disease, that's what happens. They feel unwell, they might have a headache, they're lethargic, they might be breathless for about 7 to 10 days. And what's going on is these cytokines are buzzing around in their blood, repairing it. So 7 to 10 days, they're over it. In 2, 3, 4% of patients, and nobody knows why, but that number of patients, particularly if they're elderly patients, the cytokines, instead of dropping off when the repair process is completed, they just go up through the roof. They just climb higher and higher and higher. And that's called the
cytokine storm.
That's called a cytokine storm. And instead of repairing the damage, that storm creates further damage. It creates further damage in the lungs, and it creates damage in the kidneys and the heart and the liver and all your major organs. It can lead to amputation of one of your legs, for example. And that's so a cytokine storm is the start of the problem, and what people are dying from is something called septic shock. So it starts with cytokine storm, tips over into septic shock, and that's in effect what is killing most patients with COVID-19 disease, and that's what our drug is meant to stop. So we're taking at the moment people who have been admitted to hospital. They're too sick to remain out in the general population. They need to come to hospital. They need some supplementary oxygen. So there's a little storm going on in their lungs. And what we're trying to do is to stop that from getting worse. So stop them from having to go into an ICU bed and have mechanical ventilation where there's a reasonable chance they won't come out. And so we're trying to get patients out of hospital quickly.
Without breaking any ASX listing rules, can you tell me where you are in terms of your work in COVID and cytokine shock?
Yeah.
What's the horizon look like?
Sure. Well, the trial we're running at the moment in Europe is what's called a phase 1, phase 2 trial. So the phase 1 is safety, making sure that our drug is well tolerated. We've confirmed that. The phase 2 part is then asking, well, if it's safe, does it work? Does it do anything? And within the next couple of months, we will be reporting on what's happened clinically to those patients. But in the next over the next few weeks, we expect to be reporting on what's happened to the cytokines in these people. And the question being, has our drug actually blocked, this cytokine storm? And that's a key question, because at the moment there are no drugs that have really proven to be all that effective in doing that. So we're one of, I guess, a dozen or more drugs that are trying to do it. There's been some notable failures. We are confident that we won't be a failure. The question remaining is, well, how effective are we going to be? And we expect to be reporting on that in the next few weeks.
And you're saying you are confident that you'll be reasonably effective, or was that too strong a phrase?
No, I think our confidence is based on how we understand this drug to work. And I would be incredibly surprised if we do not see some meaningful responses in these patients.
Well, I think the whole population is now more aware of all these issues, given COVID and the phase 1 and phase 2. How quickly, if your drug works on cytokine storm, I should say, how quickly could it get to market?
Well, I guess
it's a big if, I realise that.
Yeah, well, I guess people would be aware that a number of drugs have undergone this emergency accelerated approval, and but you still have to jump through some pretty key hoops to get there. No one's going to get a blank let's go. I think people understand that this pandemic is not going to disappear overnight. It's going to be with us for some years, and even though we've got the vaccine development has been remarkable, but what was maybe not foreseen was the emergence of these mutant strains of the virus, which are causing ongoing problems for the vaccines. So this is going to be a problem that we're stuck with for some years, where people are going to end up. There's always going to be a range of people needing treatment, needing to block this cytokine storm. So the world needs products like ours, should they work, to have them on the market as quickly as they can get them there. So we stand ready to do whatever we can do to get to that point.
Quickly, before I let you go, can you just give us an outline of timing in terms of your main game, or your originally main game of cancer treatment? Where are you in that continuum of development in terms of prostate cancer and other cancers that I know you're working on?
Yeah, well, we're looking at, we started with prostate cancer, and that's still a large part of what we do, but we're now spreading that to all other forms of cancer: breast, lung, sarcomas, and so forth, and pancreatic cancer. So we expect over the course of the next 2 years to have a series of trials underway that will provide clear evidence of whether it's working or not. But all of those trials are what they call open label trials, where you report on them as you go along. So we're aware of the data, and we expect to be reporting on those over the course of the next 18 months. So there will be a series of interim reports, starting, I guess, in about third quarter of this year.
Graham Kelly, I've got to wish you good luck and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.